Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired. Up and down, can you feel it? Up and down.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Kurt Johansson Show. It's Kurt, and again, got another exciting interview. This time, he calls himself the Prizefighter Dean Ford. Dean, thank you for coming on.
Thanks very much for having me, mate. How have you been?
Yeah, really good. How have you been?
Yeah, not too bad. Quite a strange time for everybody, I think. So,
Yeah, I know.
doing as well as I can.
Yeah, under the circumstances. What's it like up in Glasgow? Well, in Scotland at the moment, I know a couple of people in Glasgow that said you kind of getting onto like another lockdown, or
Yeah, everything's kind of been tightened up again. So, obviously, they'd loosened a lot of the restrictions.
yeah,
Opened the pubs, opened the restaurants and stuff. But now they've kind of tightened everything up. Where if you're in pubs or restaurants, you kind of need to wear a mask unless you're eating or drinking and everything. You're not allowed in other people's houses and stuff. So it seems to be getting to that stage again by the looks of it.
yeah. None of it really makes sense to me, to be honest. It's
Yeah, it's so 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
definitely. I'd say
Nobody really knows what they're doing, so just, I don't know, but
yeah. Well, politics in like the UK government aside from yeah, we'll get straight into it then. Obviously, you introduced yourself as the prize fighter, and that's you've got the kickboxing background, but why professional wrestling? Like, what was your first memory of wrestling, and then when you thought, actually, I want to do this as a career?
Yeah, so the first memory I have, I must have been about 4 or 5 maybe.
Yeah.
And I was at my aunt's house with my big cousin. He's maybe 9 or 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
And I think it must have been Raw. And it was like a scene I can remember. It was Jerry King Lawler on the commentary booth. And it must have been around about the time, I think they were doing like a partnership with one of the Mexican promotions. I don't know if it was Treble A or CMLL. And I can remember, I didn't know who it was at the time, but upon doing research, it was one of the minis, Mascarito Sagrada, had actually stole the headset off Jerry Lawler. And I've actually never been able to find that exact kind of segment. But, and then for then, that was it. And I don't know how long later, but it must have been a few weeks later. Same age as a kid. Saturday morning, just flicking through the channels, and I found, must have been SmackDown and Sky One, I think. And it was The Undertaker cutting a promo. But it was like during the Ministry of Darkness kind of era.
Yeah.
So it was like this kind of church scene in the background with all this kind of freaky music and the lightning and all that theatrics. And there was something, me, 5-year-old, like, I don't know why, but it was something that kind of drew us in. Just made me want to watch more. And that was every Saturday morning, SmackDown straight away. And it just kind of led on from there. I became obsessed with it.
Now, I think a lot of people's first memories is like around The Undertaker. I remember, 'cause I think would be roughly around the same age. So around that time as well, one of my memories was always The Undertaker. It was one of my first figures was The Undertaker. And then before I know it, I've got like the 3 different versions of Undertaker at that point on the figures. And it's like, I can't really have Undertaker versus Undertaker. But
Yeah, it got to that stage where, like you're saying with the figures and stuff. Like, at that time where I lived, there wasn't kind of a lot of access to figures.
yeah.
So I would hear or ask people at school, and for the weekends I'd be like, Dad, we need to get into Glasgow. Dad, we need to go to this shop to buy figures. I'd got them travelling the country, try to buy figures, try to buy merchandise. Do you know what I mean? So.
No, I don't blame you, but I've got to say, you must be the first person when I've asked for all these interviews, and it's like, what was your first memory in this? To talk about Jerry the King Lawler having his headset stolen from a mini luchador.
It's weird that because at the time I didn't really. Obviously, I was a kid, and it wasn't until later on. I think it was Lucha Underground. Maybe I seen the same guy, and it wasn't maybe like 10 or 15 years later. I was like, "That's the guy." You know what I mean? All these years, I've just remembered this wee luchador with a mask, kind of midget guy, and 15 years later, I've clicked who it actually was. You know what I mean? So just try to explain it to some people, they just look at you like, "All right, aye." Like, there's no clue what you're talking about. So
I'm gonna have to try and find it. And if I do, I'll have to send you it since you've not been able to find it. But
yeah.
what was the point when you thought, right, I'm gonna do this for a living. I'm gonna try and make a go of being a professional wrestler.
I think most kids, like when you're young and you're watching wrestling, I think if you're a big wrestling fan, most people's dream is, I want to be a WWE champion. It's cliche, but I think it's true. Like you wrestle with your friends, or you wrestle your toys, big teddies and stuff in the living room or whatever. I can't remember what age exactly, but I can remember looking for schools, and I think must have been around about the same age I got into kickboxing. So I got into kickboxing when I was 11.
Yeah.
So I think it was around about the same age. And I was thinking, I think I found a school in East Kilbride, which is just outside Glasgow.
Yeah.
But because I'd started kickboxing, I thought there's no chance that my dad's going to let me do wrestling. So I never really thought anything of it after that. And then when I started kind of thinking about it, I'd been kickboxing for a long time, and it got to a stage where I think I was about 21.
Yeah.
And just through different things, I kind of fell out of love with it a bit. And all I knew was training for years, like different training. And obviously, I kickboxed for a lot of years at that point. And I kind of needed something else to channel my energy into. I couldn't just go for doing all that training to nothing. And I was always a big wrestling fan, and run about the same times when the ICW Fight Club stuff come on TV. So I wasn't really aware of the indie scene at all. But I'd seen like bits and pieces of ROH and stuff, so like back in the day on the wrestling channel and that. But like British wise, I wasn't really aware of anything.
Yeah.
Until I watched that, and I started kind of doing research, and I found more local stuff. And then at that point, when I found some schools run about, I was like, this is the time. Like, if I'm got to try something else, why don't I try this? So then I just decided to take the leap.
Good man. You mentioned the wrestling channel, like that was everybody's dream. That was an amazing channel.
Oh, unreal.
Or TNA, like everything was on it.
If it wasn't for the wrestling channel, like a lot of people wouldn't even have been aware of TNA.
Yeah.
Like I went through a stage, like obviously all I knew before that was WWE. I'd seen bits of WCW and bits of ECW, but I didn't really understand that it was different because I was so young. But it must have been about 03, 04. I didn't have Sky in my house, but during the summer holidays, I used to go to my aunt's house, and she had Sky, and I found this wrestling channel, and TNA from then on was the only thing I watched for ages. Like, it was just so different to WWE, like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, all the guys. It was such an alternative. It was completely different for anything WWE were doing at that time. It was just so cool and so different. So especially the X Division. The X Division was on fire, man. So that was kind of what took my interest.
Nah, the reason why I just started with a massive grin, it was very similar. Like, didn't have Sky, we still had the box, so we got the free channels, and obviously Wrestling Channel was part of that. And for a long time, literally the only time I'd keep up with WWE is if I saw something on the internet or it was in a magazine. But the watch or on the games was sometimes how I was keeping in touch with who's at WWE. But all I was watching for years was TNA. That was my promotion, and like yourself, just the X Division, like seeing the triple threat matches with Joe, Daniels, and AJ. To this day, still probably the greatest triple threat of all time, in my opinion. I
think it was because of that time as well. Like, you were starting to see crossovers, so you're starting to see like Christian going over, and then the Dudleys, and then Kurt Angle and Sting and guys like that. And it was like, this obviously is a big deal if all these kind of big, massive names are going to TNA. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just made it kind of more real as well. Plus, you're seeing all them create all these other guys as well. So it was great, man.
Yeah, obviously, my name being Kurt, I used to hate Kurt Angle. Massive heel, like, he was so good at his job, but then all my mates would just rib me. I'm like, you suck. I'm like, I don't even like Kurt Angle. And they'd still continue, but then those years later, it turns up in TNA, and I was just like, oh, he's an absolute beast now. Because he's be that more serious and the headbutt to Samoa Joe and stuff like that. But so going back to like yourself, going into your first training session, what was that like for you? Because again, you've got the kickboxing background, you're an athlete, but if it's anything from like when I had an insight into it, I did football and I was a pro coach and stuff like that at the time. And I just thought, this will be a breeze. I'm in shape, and I was like, this is a lot different to being in football shape. So, how did you do the transition?
Yeah, so it was kind of strange. Like, it easy in a certain regards and hard in other regards. Like, obviously, I was fit and I was flexible and stuff like that. So some of the stuff I found pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then other stuff like was just a complete shock to the system. Like, I think I don't care who you are. Like, when you take your first back bump, that changes you, man. Like, anybody that's ever done wrestling training will tell you the same thing. that changes you completely, I think. But it was like a lot of stuff I found really hard. Like, obviously, I came from a competitive fighting background, so we're taught to like not show that you're going to do anything, not show any emotion.
Yeah.
But like, and not show that you're hurt and stuff like that. Where wrestling's the complete opposite. Do you know what I mean? Like for selling and stuff, and like facials and characteristics, and even like the kind of striking side of things. Like, in fighting, you're taught not to show your strikes. Where wrestling, you're having to show your strikes and kind of pull them. It's like everything I've learned, it's like flipped.
Yeah.
So it was trying to find that happy medium, because I decided to kind of go with the gimmick and use what I kind of already had learned over that long period of time with the kicks and stuff. It was trying to find a happy medium between kicking somebody hard and hurting them, or doing it so light that it's obvious that it's fake. Do you know what I mean? So for a long time, I kind of struggled to get that level.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you get many times where everyone's like, "Dean, fuck's sake," like, because you just
no? I was actually the opposite. Like, I was always, because I coached and stuff as well, and like I trained a lot with, because I used to coach kids and I trained beginners and stuff. So like if I was ever in moving about with them, obviously everything I was throwing was controlled.
Yeah.
So it was good for that point of view. I would never ever, I don't think I've ever in wrestling hurt anybody with my strikes, but sometimes it was the opposite. Like I was too controlled, where it was just completely obvious. Like you're not even trying to make it look real. But I was, but at that stage, I was so worried about hurting anybody. Where like my coaches would pull me aside and they're like, "You need to lay them in a bit. Like you're going to expose the business by trying to be too safe." And I was like, right. At that point, it was hard to kind of get my head around, but eventually I got there. Do you know what I mean? You just need to kind of trust yourself and trust other people.
Yeah, definitely. What was the reception, whether it's your coaches or your fellow trainees? Here you come as a kickboxing background. Was there any animosity that you've come from a different sport? Sometimes you do get it where people are like, well, why is he getting an opportunity? He's come from kickboxing or he's come from boxing. Did you have any of that?
Not that I can remember, no. Everybody was kind of supportive. Because although obviously I came from a different sport, I was still brand new to wrestling.
Yeah.
So like when I started, I was just asking for as much advice as I could. Like the guys that had been there a while, just kind of try to pick people's brains, and everybody was like helping as much as they could and doing everything they could to help. There was no ill will or anything, which was great.
Ah, good. What about like the obviously in professional wrestling, a lot of people like doing their strikes and their kicks, and not everybody has been trained to do so. Whether that's kickboxing, MMA, taekwondo, anything like that. I remember Alistair Black. I think it might be when he was as Tommy End. He used to talk about people doing all these unsafe kicks, and if you're wanting to do the kicks, at least go out and learn how to do them properly, so then you can make them safe.
Yeah.
How do you feel in terms of that, where you might have somebody think, oh, that looks cool, never thrown a kick in their life, and then start pulling out, and that's where injuries can happen?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying stuff like that. Like a lot of guys that do that style, most have maybe not competed, but at least trained in a martial art. Obviously, Alistair Black trained with high-level kickboxing coaches. Luchasaurus in AEW, I think he was high-level taekwondo kind of trained guy. Obviously, Speedball and Ridgeway and guys like that. Most have done kind of martial arts training. It's hard. It's not really for me to say, but I understand it, because I think if you've not been trained, like when you're trained in martial arts, you're trained in discipline and control as well. So if you don't have that training, you're maybe more liable to hurt somebody because you don't have the control and the right kind of technique with stuff. So I can understand that, but again, I don't know if that's for me to say.
No, I was just wondering, like, your thoughts on it as somebody that obviously kickboxing was a passion. You put a lot of years into it. So
I've definitely noticed, like, the guys that I've worked with or whatever that have had martial arts experience, everything looks better, everything is safer, everything looks more real than guys that are just trying it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that. So how long had you been training in professional wrestling before you made your debut then?
So I think I was just over a year. I started training in August in 2015, and I debuted, I think it was in November 2016.
Okay. Who was your debut with, and who was you facing?
So my debut was actually a Rumble match for a company that are defunct now, called SSW, Scottish School of Wrestling.
Okay.
But I was officially debuting, I think it was 2 weeks later. It was the school I trained at. They have an Academy Attack series, it's called. So it's like trainee shows. You invite your friends and family, and it's all most people's kind of first and second matches. With the more experienced students, kind of help them take them through the matches and stuff. So my actual debut at that, it was a tag team match. It was myself and a guy called Kyle Turner. He was kind of same experience against King Sharp and Krueger, who were the PBW tag team champions at the time. So that was
big match.
Quite nerve wracking, but really good as well, because they were really cracking on with their careers, but they were still heavily involved with training, like still training themselves, but helping out a lot. So it was good for them to kind of look after us and give us that help and that experience.
Yeah. So what was going through your mind then when, obviously, you're going to do your professional wrestling, you're having to think of getting through the match, and like you said, it didn't come natural to you to start showing emotion and basically unlearning everything you've just learned with kickboxing to then relearn it. So what was it like with doing your first match in front of the audience? And again, you mentioned the names there, Krueger and King Sharp, two of the finest in the Scottish wrestling scene, and you're going up against them. What was that like for you?
It was a lot more nerve wracking than I had imagined, because I thought, because I'd fought in front of like big crowds and stuff, I'd fought all over the world, big crowds in different places, and I thought, oh, this would just be the same, but it was totally different. Like, I think because when you're fighting, you don't think about it. Like, you're just going in there to do a job. Where with wrestling, obviously, it's a show, so you're acknowledging the crowd a lot more.
Yeah.
So I can always remember. So it was just when Lou and Krueger started doing their kind of dancing gimmick. So they went out first as the heels, and we are standing behind the curtain waiting to go. And they done this kind of shtick where I think it was just before Christmas, and it was like, I think it was Mariah Carey's Christmas song or whatever it is. And they're dancing about, but obviously we're behind the curtain, so we don't know what's happening. And I'm so nervous. And then the music stops, and I think, right, man, music's got to hit here, ready to go. And Lou cuts a promo saying, if MD gives us £5, we'll do another dance. Somebody for the crowd gave them £5. They put the song back on. They danced for another 3 minutes. My nerves are shattered. I'm like, just hurry up. See, that way, like, my first ever match. So I was a bit nervous, but eventually, once I got it done with, it was amazing.
What sort of feedback did you get after the match then?
I can't really remember, because it was one of the things, like, I don't think I slept that night because I was so excited. I think when it's like something, I think I was 22 by the time I debuted, and that's something that you've wanted to do since you were a kid, do you know what I mean? So people were telling me things, and I just wasn't taking anything in, not in like a rude way, just so excited. It was like a big kid at Christmas, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what's your career gone like at the moment then with like PBW? And I know you've been with a few other companies. So what was it like expanding and going to different shows where they're like, Dean, we like what you're doing. We want to bring you in. And then it's kind of like the unknown again. You're the outsider sometimes going in. What's that been like, and what are some of the companies you've been going with?
To start with, for me, I always just wanted to learn as much as I could and do everything I could. So I always liked to go to shows, as many shows as I could, especially when I debuted. I helped the ring, other shows, different companies, go along and help. Always take your gear with you. And sometimes it's just a case of something happens, somebody pulls out. Right, if you've got your gear, yeah, I've got my gear. Right, you're thrown in. And I get so many opportunities that way, like driving other talent and help me the ring and stuff. And I think I made my debut in about 3 or 4 new companies within a year, just by being there and kind of showing keen and stuff. So that really worked for me. And obviously being backstage with different people and picking their brains and asking for advice, I think that's how I kind of expanded pretty quickly.
Yeah,
so I kind of branched out into places like BCW and Rock and Wrestle, W3L, and up in North of Scotland, and different places.
Yeah. So what was the first time that actually happened to you then? Where again you're just helping out, and it's the first time where you're not really expecting to wrestle, and like, Dean, we need you. You got your gear. What was that like? What was the nerves like for that?
I can remember it was one of the BCW shows at the Kilmarnock Grand Hall. So it's a massive big venue. They've got like a big stage with a ramp, pyro and all that.
Yeah.
Usually always have an import, so they've had Matt Hardy, EC3, a lot of ex-WWE guys.
Yeah.
So I think this show, I can't remember who the import was, but it was when Drew was still over and Drew was on it. And they always used to have a pre-show match, so they'll let so many fans in early and have like a pre-show match. But for some reason, they didn't have anything booked. So we were setting up the ring, and it must have been like, I don't know if it was just so busy that the promoter had forgot or whatever. So I think it was like half an hour to show time, and myself and a few others get pulled aside. Right, you're on the pre-show. Go and plan your match. You've got half an hour before the show starts. So that was so nervous because obviously, like you're saying, it's a new company. I'm not very experienced at the time at all, and you've literally got 30 minutes to go and get your gear on, plan a match, and go and do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was really nervous. I think as well because the pre-show there's only like, I think it's first and second row in. So I think the venue holds like 700. So there's maybe 50 people in. So it's a massive big venue with next to nobody in. So it was quite eerie. Like you were expecting people to react, or you didn't know if they were going to react, and because it was that big, it was a strange kind of atmosphere. But one of my favourite atmospheres, in a sense, because I made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
But at the time, being so inexperienced, I was, oh my God, this is ending my career. But in a kind of roundabout way, making the mistakes made me learn so much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's good to make any mistakes so early in your career when there's not very many people watching. And then that's how you learn, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think people should be disregarded as mistakes in anything you do in life, really. Like you said, it's a learning curve. And it's the only time it's an issue is when you keep doing the same mistake.
Yeah.
Then that's when you're not having that progression and you're not developing. But if it's a mistake in something else, then fair enough, right? I need to learn on that, and I need to work on this. So 100%, I think
Even getting through into the deep end like that, we never had a lot of time to sort stuff out. As bad as it was at the time, and I never slept that night with the fear, thinking, "Oh my God, this is so bad." But it kind of prepared me for that situation because, like, a few years later, I'd done the holiday parts for All Star, and a lot of the times you've only got so much time to kind of set the ring up. So that kind of prepared me for that. So sometimes if you're running late, you're setting the ring up, you literally get your gear on, you're in the ring, and you just need to go. So like that was a good kind of lesson for that to just make sure that it doesn't matter how long you've got to sort things out, you find a way to make it work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't realize you did the All Star. It seems to be recently like everybody. I keep attracting people that work for All Star. And I think whether it is like NGW, All Star, Mega Slam, WAW, Welsh Wrestling, all these different touring companies where they work the summer camps, I think it's invaluable. I really think it's something not even British, but every wrestler should try and get on at some point. Because you're not always going to be in front of wrestling fans. It's just fans are on holiday and you're the entertainment for the evening, so you can try new stuff. What was your first experience like with All Star then? Where it's one thing wrestling in front of a wrestling crowd, but then after the crowd, it might be the first time they've even come across wrestling.
For me, that was where I really started to feel that things are coming together. Because he just says it's one thing putting a match on for wrestling fans, but putting a match on for people that are just there to see some entertainment is just a totally different thing. So the run for All Star was, I think it was 2018. I done it. It was 9 weeks long. So because the Scottish holidays start 3 weeks before the English holidays, so it's like 5 days a week. I think 5 shows a week for 9 weeks, just constant. And you've got guys. Brian brings guys in from Japan, Mexico, Europe, America, and you've got like a lot of the kind of bigger names, British names like Dean Allmark, Rampage, just loads of different guys swapping in and out. So the experience, because at that stage of my career, I was only maybe a year and a bit in. So even to get the experience to be getting in with these guys and learning off these guys, as well as kind of treating it as a full-time job because you're doing it every day.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing experience and valuable for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's all about like getting the repetitions, and you said there 5 shows every week for 9 weeks solid. In 1 week, you've probably worked more than what you might have in a month or in
100%.
at that point, because if your companies aren't running regular, then you can only work as often as they're running, really.
Yeah. So, even just small things as well, like outside the ring, because you're driving from like venue to venue and you're in the car with all these experienced guys, just picking their brains and asking them stuff. And sometimes you can learn more doing that than the actual shows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, if you can entertain a non-wrestling fan, then entertaining somebody that is a wrestling fan should be easy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's just getting that kind of side it down was really helped me, especially coming from a kind of martial arts background where like my character stuff wasn't the greatest.
Yeah.
Because I was always kind of told to hide stuff and not show emotion, and that really helped me come out my shell with like the kind of theatrics and like talking and that side of stuff. So I probably the best experience in my career so far is definitely All-Star Run, yeah.
No, that's amazing. And like even like seeing you speak about it, you can tell it's probably been what was the making of you and why you're so confident now. And it was, again, working with like some great people, being around some great people. What was probably like your favourite memory in ring for All-Star? Who was that with?
So I think the way the days went, we worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We were off on the Friday. We worked Saturday, Sunday, and we were off on the Monday again. So I think one of the weeks I worked BT Gunn the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like 3 shows in a row, and that was just changed the game for me completely. So it was a guy I always had kind of looked up to, and I hadn't been anywhere close to at that point because I was just kind of starting out. So even to get the chance of being on the run was massive, and to get the experience of getting with a guy that, in my opinion, one of the best unsigned guys in the country by a mile, and just learn off him and kind of get to know him. And each day, I always got somebody to video my matches. So like on the Tuesday, I'd video the match, I'd watch it, or even watch it with him later on. And right, this bit didn't go great. Tomorrow we get to fix that, and then the same again. And right, we fixed this bit. This bit was better, but this bit could. So you've kind of almost got like a coach with you to an extent, where you've got 3 days to kind of refine this routine. So that was brilliant for me. And I've wrestled him a few times since, and we've always had kind of good chemistry and stuff. So probably one of my favourite opponents, definitely.
Oh, no, brilliant. So like speaking of like favourite moments or big time matches, like again BT Gunn, we'll mention the Krueger and Luke Sharp match. What other matches, barring the ICW one, we'll get to that shortly, but what other matches of yours stands out and what companies were there with?
So, again, the tail end of last year, I think it was December, I wrestled a triple threat for was actually in my hometown where I stay. It's for Pro Wrestling Scotland. So it's TJ Rage, one of the guys that coached me.
Yeah.
It's his company. They ran in New Mains, which is where I stay. So it was myself versus BT Gunn versus StevieBoy Xavier in a 3-way. That was the main event. So that was just ridiculous, man. Like, obviously, the main event, my kind of local show, was one thing, but to obviously be in the ring with the two guys, like Stevie's in the same kind of platform for me as BT. Like, even as a tag team, they're probably one of the most underrated tag teams in Britain. They've got so much chemistry, but as singles guys as well, like they're absolutely outstanding. So I had never had the pleasure before to share the ring with Stevie, but I'd obviously have wrestled BT, so to just get the both of them and mix the styles and throw ideas about it, honestly was brilliant. It was probably the best way to end my year, because I went through a couple of months where I had a few kind of performances I wasn't really pleased with.
Yeah.
And I was starting to doubt myself a little bit. And I think that was the perfect match to kind of finish the year and get me kind of ready to go again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, like you said, like two massive names, but to do it in your hometown, like what's that feeling like then when you are in your hometown and you're getting billed from there? Maybe your family and friends are there to watch, and you're against two of the best Scotland have produced.
That's probably more nerve-wracking than like wrestling in front of like 1,000 people, I think, because it was only like a small venue. I think it was only like maybe 150, but as you say, like I sold a lot of tickets, and even other people that were there like locally knew me and stuff. So it was like other shows, people are going to be watching the show, but they're not necessarily going to be watching you, if that makes sense. Where like I'm billed as a kind of hometown guy, big main event against obviously two of the best in the country. So there was a bit of nerves there. Obviously, I don't want to let myself down or my family and stuff, but as well, like, am I good enough to hang with these two guys? Like that always kind of crept in. This is my big opportunity to prove that I can hang with these guys. Do you know what I mean? So that was a bit of nerves, but honestly, probably definitely my favourite match for last year. One of my favourites so far, 100%.
What was the feedback you was getting from that then?
Really good, actually. It's hard to explain, man. Like, I was kind of timid when we were like talking before it, and they were really good to me. They were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, you're the top guys, you tell me. And they're like, no, asking for me a lot of input and stuff. And they seem to be quite happy the way everything worked out. And they two have always been pretty good with me since I started. Like, even if I'm not wrestling them, if they're on the show, and I'll go and ask them, is there any chance you can watch this match? Give me some advice. They've always been great. So I've always had a kind of good friendship with them. So everything couldn't have went any better for me.
Oh, no, brilliant. And so I mentioned the company earlier. So you made your ICW debut with Gonzo. What was the experience like for you, and how did that debut come about?
That was pretty nerve-wracking as well, because that's kind of how I get into Scottish wrestling, as I say, with the ICW documentaries and stuff. I think a lot of people are maybe on the same boat with that.
Yeah.
So obviously, when I started wrestling, I wanted to be a wrestler and be as good as I could, but always in the back of my mind was I want to wrestle for ICW, because they were like at the forefront of Scottish wrestling, maybe even British wrestling. And then at my training school at the time, Dallas came for a seminar. So he was focusing on a lot of kind of character work and promos and stuff, but because of the kind of Gonzo thing was just starting out, he was looking for new talent to kind of be on the Gonzo. So we had a lot of, it was almost like tryouts in the training school. So we had a lot of kind of training matches and stuff. And he decided to use myself, Ian Skinner, and Dan Weiss as a a 6-man tag against Power Forward, who were like 3 masked guys that were run about in Mark Coffey, I think, at the time. So that was a great opportunity, but again, it was a totally different kind of genre as well, because I'd worked family shows and I'd worked like the camp style stuff, but it was the first time I had worked like adult kind of over 18s.
Yeah.
So it's I think a lot of people don't understand it's a totally different thing again, because like wrestling in front of wrestling fans that are kids, or wrestling in front of non-wrestling fans, and now you're wrestling in front of smarter adult fans.
Yeah.
So it's trying to kind of make everything work under the circumstances. It's like music. It's like if you're a band and you play in front of a certain type of fans, and then you play a different show in front of a different kind of audience, you may not get the same reception, or you may need to change the way you played. You know what I mean? So that was always a bit a thing for me, but I was excited as well, because I could maybe try stuff that I wouldn't have got away with on other shows.
Yeah. How do you feel that went then? How do you feel the 6-man went?
At the time, I was beating myself up a lot. I think it's just the pressure, like because it is one of the kind of bigger companies.
Yeah.
The pressure of feeling is quite high. But when I watched it back, I actually thought it went really well. I really enjoyed it. I'd got some good feedback and stuff as well off of that. But I'm my own worst critic with a lot of stuff. Like even going back to the kind of fighting days, I don't know how many times. Sometimes I've even put on my best performance, and I'll come back and I'll be like, that was rubbish. And it's not you watch it back, but you kind of calm down and chill it a wee bit. Where you're like, actually, why am I worrying? Do you know what I mean? I just need to enjoy it and not stress out so much.
Nah, definitely. So did you have any like friends that was into wrestling and stuff like that? Obviously you mentioned the Fight Club, so what was they like when you actually made your debut?
So around the time when the kind of Fight Club stuff and that came out, there was one of my friends I'd been friends with for high school. Me and him were always, I think that's how maybe we became so close. We were always massive wrestling fans, even like getting into like older years when a lot of people were kind of grown out of it and stuff. We'd go to each other's houses and watch the pay-per-views and WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and the rest of it. And it was around about the time all that came out and I was thinking about training. He started training before me.
Okay.
And said to me, come along, you'll love it. So I came along, and obviously, as they say, the rest is history. But he never actually, he stuck it for a wee while, but realised it wasn't for him. But he's been so supportive, and my other pals that are in the same kind of friend group are always so supportive, and they always come and support me, and they all actually came to watch me in ICW, so that was quite special.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what's your goals then? Obviously 2020's been a write-off, like wrestling being in the bin because of like COVID and stuff like that, but you went from 2019 having one of, if not your favourite match of your career so far against Xavier and BT Gunn. So what are your goals short term and long term?
Long term, I think most people's is kind of similar. I want to do this full time. I want to do this as a job.
Yeah.
And aim to try and get a contract. And I think everybody's first goal, as a lot of people will mention, want to be WWE champ. But for me, there's that many options now. Like you've got New Japan, AEW, Impact, WWE, anywhere at all. Just to do what I love as a job, that would be it for me. It's not about money, it's not about fame, it's just to be doing a job that isn't a job, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Short term, like I've worked some cool places and stuff, but there's still a lot of places, some companies in Scotland I'd like to work, like Discovery, back into ICW hopefully, break out into England. There's so many good companies in England. Break out into other countries like Ireland, maybe over to mainland Europe.
Yeah.
I just want to keep getting better, keep having fun, and keep improving and try and help people, and don't know, just show what I can do to a wider audience.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what's your thoughts on the fact that like Gonzo could end up on the network?
Crazy, man. Crazy. the fact that ICW is even on the network, I think, is ridiculous. It's amazing. Like, obviously, I'm friendly with a lot of guys that work for ICW, and just to see them on that stage, I couldn't be any happier for them. Do you know what I mean? So if Gonzo would end up on it, that would be amazing. But I want to get back in there. I want to show how good I am, show what I can do, and hopefully get back on these calibre of shows again. Yeah. After everything's kind of sorted out, whenever COVID decides to calm down and let us all wrestle again.
Hopefully soon. You mentioned the company then with obviously WWE. How did it feel like with you just starting out over the past few years? We now have NXT UK, and something that may have been, and I'm not saying it's something that's easier to get and everybody that's there does deserve their spots, but something that used to be so unattainable because it was only maybe 2 or 3 people from these shows that get picked up to go to America. But now we've got a touring WWE company here based out of London. They'll travel around. What's your thoughts on having that as a potential pathway now?
Absolutely massive, man. Like, obviously, I only started out 5 years ago, so it's not that long, but just the way the landscape's changed in the 5 years, like, before even NXT UK came about, like, how big the kind of UK scene became with like ICW, Progress, Rev Pro, all these companies became massive, and like guys around the world or what work for these companies, do you know what I mean? It wasn't just guys in Britain, and then obviously I think due to that came NXT UK, and just to have that, like as you said before, it was a pipe dream to work for WWE. Don't get me wrong, it's by no means going to be easy now, but it's a lot more accessible, and it definitely keeps you motivated and makes you work hard. That the possibility if you get good enough and impress enough people that you could possibly get there is amazing.
Yeah, definitely. So before we get where people can find you, like if people are thinking, actually, I'm going to check Dean out, I'm going to try and have a look at your matches and some of the matches we've spoken about. When they see Dean Ford, the prize fighter, in the ring, what can they expect?
Mayhem, probably the best thing. A lot of strikes for all angles, hands, feet, elbows, knees. Sometimes I'll even do a wee bit of flying through the air to kick you. Anything I can do to hurt you and put as much damage in you as possible. I just think I try and give something a wee bit different as much as I can, using obviously the skills that I've learned over a long period of time. Because there's so much, the beauty of wrestling is there's so many different things, there's so many different styles. I just try and provide something a wee bit different. I think that's probably the best way to describe me.
No, brilliant. So Dean, again, thank you for coming on the show. Really enjoyed chatting, especially since it seems like our fandom of wrestling kind of paralleled each other, like wrestling channel and stuff like that. And again, I think my first view of ICW was the Fight Club. I only knew of like a couple of indie promotions at that point. So no, that's great, and it's great to see like within that 5 years you've gone from thinking, do I try it out, to then go training, and then again ICW. That's one of your goals, and you've made that happen in a short space of time. So all respect to you for that.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
So where can everybody find you? Like whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, where can they support Dean? So
my Twitter and Instagram is Dean Ford _PRZFTR for obviously Prizefighter. my Facebook is facebook.com/DeanFordPW.
Brilliant. And again, like, best of luck, especially, let's say, for 2021. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I'm not really. I know some shows are coming back for the back end of 2020, but I'm still not convinced they're all going to go ahead. So, yeah, all the best for 2021, and hopefully, maybe at the end of next year we can do it again. See how far you've come within that next year, and yeah, I wish you all the best, mate.
Have to, man. Thanks very much, and thanks for giving us a chance to come on.
No, you're welcome. So, everybody, make sure you do follow Dean. Make sure if you're wanting him in your companies, make sure you tweet out there. Like he said, he wants to be wrestling all over Scotland, more in England, and across through Europe. And yeah, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit subscribe, so you're gonna be able to see all my new interviews. Make sure you have a look through the playlist as well for all the previous interviews from everybody around the world. I think I've hit about 10 different countries now for my interviews and my guests. So, yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Friday morning.